Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Chiefs Training Camp Report on Friday, July 29th. Day 3 of Chiefs Training Camp has wrapped, and that means we need to welcome on the man with the best hair in the Chiefs media, editor-in-chief of Arrowhead Pride, Pete Sweeney. Big Sween, it seems like your guy MVS finally had himself a day up in St. Joe today.
Yeah, first and foremost, that award that you're referring to with the best hair goes to Blair Kirkhoff of the Kansas City Star. But I appreciate the love. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I thought finally did stand out today in today's workout. I think we had seen Mahomes going to Juju a lot, and I felt a little dumb because I've been pumping this MVS connection with Patrick Mahomes since OTAs, and we did see a little bit of that. I thought more today than we did the first 2 days. A lot of this doesn't matter right now, and I know we're going to be talking about the padded practice that begins on Monday. That's when the real football begins, so we'll see what happens once they do have these padded practices. But, yeah, I think in this look, particularly today, MVS came into his own. I thought another player who stood out was Sky Moore. I thought both of these wide receivers took a step further than we saw in the first 2 days of training camp, particularly here on Friday.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you about Chiefs wide receiver Sky Moore, who was he had a big time catch today, and it was something that was really highlighted from all of the reports in training camp. So just tell us a little bit about how he's looked, because we've already mentioned he was dealing with that hamstring injury, so he didn't get to participate in a lot of the offseason programs.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think that Sky Moore was kind of going through a little bit, and I don't want to emphasize, I don't think it was a lot, but a little bit of these rookie woes. I remember he was taking his first pro snaps at practice this week with the full team in this type of setting. And so I think there was like some cobwebs there, maybe some nervousness, but then he made this catch today, and it was one of these catches where he had to fully extend, and then he kind of fell to the ground. And it really was one of these moments, I thought, where, okay, let's see if he can build on that, because I don't know if a lot of wide receivers would have been able to make that catch, period, let alone here at Kansas City Chiefs training camp. And then he put together a really, really strong practice. I noticed that he looked a lot more comfortable today than he did in previous workouts that we saw this week. And so much so that we got Patrick Mahomes at the podium today. And if you go back to From the Podium right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, you can hear me asking Mahomes about Sky Moore, and Mahomes agreed. And so I was made me feel good, because I was like, okay, my eyes are telling me like he did really look a little bit more comfortable. I mean, and we're on day 3. I mean, that could have been something that you might think, okay, that may take 10 days. So I think a really good development when it comes to rookie Sky Moore and his potential to be with this first team offense that already has a lot of quality wide receivers.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the veteran wide receivers that they signed in Juju and MVS, who have both shown flashes in training camp. But if you're a Chiefs fan, Sky Moore's got a strong chance to be the future of that receiving room. So you got to be happy that he's showing some promise up there in St. Joseph, Missouri. I want to ask you about Carlos Dunlap. He was not on the field in St. Joe. He is not in attendance just yet. Did we get an update from Andy Reid on the status of their new pass rusher?
Yeah, I think it's been out there from CBS Sports' Josina Anderson. There's some personal matters he's taking care of, and so I believe Andy Reid said Wednesday next week is when we can expect Dunlap. That had been what I was hearing anyway when I talked to a few people yesterday. So nothing to worry about there. You know, personal matters. This is a guy that's been in the NFL for over 10 years. We know what Dunlap is at this point. I think the sooner he gets here, of course, the better, because the Chiefs can start to figure out, okay, how are we going to rotate this guy in? I'm eager to see if he is across from Frank Clark, or who knows. I mean, we could have a situation at the end of next week where the starting defensive ends might be George Karlaftis and Carlos Dunlap. I think he's that quality of a player. So I'm eager to see how the Chiefs start to mix and match there. We know this is a defensive line that they like to rotate a lot of guys, 6, 7 guys all throughout the game to keep their legs fresh. And so I think the sooner he gets here, the better, but nothing to really worry about. This is a player that's been in the NFL for over 10 years. So I think he's going to be able to pick up right where he left off.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs are worried about Carlos Dunlap being prepared.
No.
You mentioned it. He's a veteran. He knows how these things go, and he's going to be a rotational pass rusher for them. So whenever he can get there, and he'll have an impact. It seemed like the guy of the day for the Kansas City Chiefs was Jody Fortson. Just Jody Fortson, it's already impressive that he's already back and fully participating in training camp coming off the
Yes.
Achilles injury, but he's been showing serious flashes based on what I've been hearing from training camp.
Yeah, it's one of those things where in the NFL, if you're going to get hurt, you might as well get hurt early on in the season because he looks fully healthy. And I'll tell you, we talked about picking up right where he left off with Dunlap. This is a player who in 6 games had 2 touchdowns for the Chiefs and really, I think, was teetering along the lines of breaking out as a tight end in the NFL. We wondered, well, what's going to happen when Travis Kelce does call it quits? I mean, I don't anticipate that anytime soon, but you like to have a tight end that is behind him and at some point here is going to be able to take the reins. And I think Fortson might quietly be building a case for that. And it's definitely something that you like to see. And when you're talking about tight end 2 on this team, I think for a while now it's been Blake Bell. He did have that sabbatical year with the Dallas Cowboys. And so you thought, all right, maybe Bell will be this tight end 2 guy. But I think Jody Fortson is starting to run away with what would be that position. We had mentioned he did get the Veterans Day off when it was rookies and quarterbacks up here. So I think he's a guy you could write in on the roster. And I wonder what that means for Blake Bell and Noah Gray. We mentioned in our Arrowhead Pride first iteration of the 53-man roster projection, there could be a little bit of a sneaky battle between Noah Gray and Blake Bell for like that blocking tight end role. And I think that's what we're talking about now. Like that to me is Jody Fortson really emerging as the clear-cut tight end 2. And is it okay, the Chiefs will keep Noah Gray and say goodbye to Blake Bell? I tend to think that Blake Bell is a guy that they could save a roster spot with if they feel Noah Gray is ready to take those duties.
I remember last season on an episode of Show MBK, which you can find the latest episode on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I kind of made a tongue-in-cheek joke when the Chiefs offense was really struggling and they were really particularly struggling in the red zone. I made a joke about how their red zone offense went down the tube as soon as Jody Fortson got hurt last season, because early in the year, he had a couple of touchdowns where he looked like he was going to be a force in the red zone for Patrick Mahomes. And I think there's reason to be excited for him to do that. He's such a big body guy. He's athletic. We know he can catch passes. I'm really excited to see Jody Fortson's role in this offense because I think he's definitely going to have a big one. On Friday.
Right. No, just a quick point on that, Steve, before we move on. I just, you think about the scenarios. Like, let's say the Chiefs are 5 yards out to score a touchdown and they're in the red zone. And then all of a sudden you have Travis Kelce on the field. You have Jody Fortson on the field. Juju and MBS maybe on the other side or split out wide. And then in the backfield, Ronald Jones is waiting and you're not really sure if the Chiefs are just going to try to bulldoze into the end zone. Who are you guarding in that situation? And I think that's exactly what you want to see if you're Kansas City. And I think they're going to be a lot better in the red zone. And you know what? You made a joke about it, but I think Fortson could potentially be a big part of that.
Yeah, Travis Kelce's going to see a lot of double and triple coverage in the end zone. That's going to leave Jody Fortson wide open for the touchdown. So,
very possible. Yeah, very possible.
It seemed like the biggest play of the day that was highlighted up in St. Joseph was Willie Gay picking off Patrick Mahomes. I've talked to you about Willie Gay quite a bit, Pete. I'm really excited for these young linebackers, especially him, because we're finally, I think, going to see him step into that full-time role this season. And he's definitely their best pass coverage linebacker. And it seems like he just continues to make that apparent up in St. Joe.
Yeah, this was a play where Willie Gay stepped in front of the intended target and he took it 95 yards back to the house. I joked with one of the other media members up here that when Gay ran it all the way back for a touchdown, he started to pump up the crowd. And there are people here, and it was pretty loud here, even in the media tent, which was far away from the crowd that he was kind of riling up. And this is something that he's been trying to pump up this crowd, even through OTAs when there were no fans there. He was practicing pumping up the crowd on a big defensive stand. And so I think it was sort of a completion of where we are in the offseason. We're finally here. We're finally at training camp. We finally have real people watching, and it just was a nice moment for Gay, who, had an interesting offseason and end of last year to say the very least. And I think he's eyes forward now, really focused on football, and we'll see if he can really take that next step here in 2022.
Yeah, one thing that just really excites me about him as a player, and we've seen it now through his first 2 years in the NFL, is when Spags actually utilizes him, he seems to have a nose for the ball. Like, he's forced some turnovers and limited snaps through 2 years. And so as a full-time player, I think that Willie Gay can really be a playmaker for this defense. And sticking with the defense, and final thing for me, Pete, Rookie cornerback Joshua Williams continues to impress a lot of people in training camp. And we talked about last night on Show and BK. We're totally falling in love with Joshua Williams. Has he been as impressive as the hype is making him out to be?
Yeah, you know what? And I hate to put a negative spin on this, but he looks more of the part than the first rounder Trent McDuffie does, at least so far. And that's, that's a good thing for the fourth round pick, but not such a good thing for the first round pick. McDuffie has been on the wrong end, going up against what are really high quality receivers. Not to say we're writing off Trent McDuffie at day 3 of training camp. Of course, pads come on Monday, but of the two, Williams certainly looks more of like a starting cornerback than McDuffie does at this stage. And so I think it's something to monitor. It's a good development, and in a way, as I'm presenting it, it's a bad development, I think, in a way. So we'll see how this storyline goes as camp goes. You hope that McDuffie continues to take a step forward. You hope that, okay, this isn't just the first few days for Joshua Williams. Maybe he can be another day 3 Brett Veach cornerback pick on the outside there. But it's one of those things where you didn't really expect Rashad Fenton to still be sitting out. He had shoulder surgery. The Chiefs had said in the offseason they expect him to be ready at the start of training camp. Because he is sidelined to begin, you're getting to see what you have in Joshua Williams, and that looks like another potential L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th round that they got. Maybe someone who could potentially replace Travarius Ford, and we'll continue to keep our eyes on McDuffie. Again, I think McDuffie will be helped by padded practices, because when you start to introduce more contact, that's where, man-to-man, he could beat him up within the first 5 yards. I think that's where maybe McDuffie will start to show what Brett Veach saw in that first round.
We're feeling good about rookie 4th round cornerback Joshua Williams, and you got to bring in the 1st round cornerback that they traded up for and be like, well, he kind of looks better than that guy.
I hate to say it. I mean, if we're talking all about the cornerback Joshua Williams, I mean, who are we not talking about? And it's a good thing, and of course there's a bad part of that as well.
Yeah, I do agree. I think getting the pads on and being able to create a little bit more contact is probably going to help McDuffie's game, but it's hard to ignore what we've been hearing about Joshua Williams so far in training camp. But he's Pete Sweeney. Please make sure you follow him on Twitter, as well as check out everything that he's cranking out at arrowheadpride.com. If you want to listen to the Chiefs press conferences in their entirety, you can do so on From the Podium at the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. As always, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will talk to you guys tomorrow for day 4 of Chiefs training camp.